all you have to do is look around to see that Christmas season is here. Now, this might be decorations that you see somewhere. Maybe you've already got a Christmas tree at your house that's already up, like at my house. Or maybe you've just been in stores or you've been shopping online. And of course, all the retailers want you to know that Christmas season has arrived. Somehow, somewhere, Black Friday became the official start of the Christmas season. Now, as Christians, of course, we know that Christmas is about so much more than shopping and decorations. Historically, the church has set aside several weeks to celebrate this. In fact, we call it Advent, which is just a word that means arrival, or anticipation might be a way to think of it. We set aside a few weeks to anticipate the birth of Jesus. So as part of our Advent celebration here as a youth group, we are going to have some conversations. The first one I want you to have is what I would call the state of the world conversation. What is the state of the world? By which I mean, what is the world really like? What kind of place is the world? And this could go from anywhere from things that you have seen on the news to what is it like for you to live in the world. I want you to have a wide-ranging conversation about the state of the world. What is the state of the world? Now, this next question, you may have already covered some of it in the previous discussion, but what I want you to stop and think about, and you really have to stop and think about this, what is it that the world needs most? Good. I'm glad we got to talk about those things. Now, as many of you know, the Bible that we have is essentially broken up into two parts. There's the Old Testament, which is essentially everything that happened before Jesus. Then there's the New Testament, which is Jesus and forward. What you might not know is that on a timeline, the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament has a gap between the two. In fact, some would say there's 400 years of gap between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. Now, a lot of people say the reason there's this gap here is because this is the time when God was silent. 400 years of the great silence, where there were no new prophets, there was no new revelation from God. 400 years. So before you had God speaking through Abraham and Moses and Isaiah and Elijah and all the prophets, and then you get to a certain point and you have nothing. No new prophets, no new revelation from God. 400 years of people wandering in darkness. Now, let me give you an idea of 400 years. This year marks 400 years since the very first Pilgrims came over on the Mayflower and landed at Plymouth Rock. 1620, 400 years ago. Now, we all think in terms of, well, I know my grandparents is kind of as far back as we can experience history, but this wouldn't be your grandparents or your great-grandparents. This would be your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. 400 years ago, 15 generations of the great silence, of God not speaking. That's a long time to wonder, for the human race to wonder, has God abandoned us? Where is God? Is someone going to come and tell us how we're supposed to be doing things down here? 400 years, the great silence. So let's think of this in terms of light and darkness. Because we can imagine a world without light. In fact, a lot of the world lives in what we would call darkness today, doesn't it? You could say that people who try to live without God are walking in darkness. This is how the prophet Isaiah described it. Hundreds of years even before the Great Silence, he called the world the people walking in darkness and those living in a land of deep darkness. Darkness is a lot like hopelessness, isn't it? You know what it feels like to be in the dark. It's disorienting, it's scary, and losing hope feels the same way. It's disorienting, and it's scary. What do we need most when we are walking in darkness? We need light. What do we need most when we are overcome by hopelessness? We need hope. So Isaiah goes on to prophesy, to make a prediction that the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. It's almost like Isaiah knew something, that he knew this great silence was coming. And he wanted people to have something to grab onto, some kind of promise they could get a hold of, some kind of candle of hope that would carry them through this darkness. Now, during this season of Advent, there's a candle actually for each week. Each candle represents something different to celebrate in the Advent season. This one is about hope. And that's because the message of Isaiah is a message of hope. There will come a day when people will no longer have to live in darkness. And Isaiah tells us why this is. He says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders." Someone will break into the darkness. Someone will end the great silence. And it's God himself bringing light into our darkness. It's God himself breaking the great silence. And it's God himself coming as a man, no, not as a man, as a child to us. Unto us a child is born. And this is why we can have hope this season. Unto us a child is born. Even if you think this has been the worst year ever in the history of ever, unto us a child is born. Even if you feel like you're in the middle of 400 years of silence, unto us a child is born. Even if you feel like you've been walking in darkness, especially then, unto us a child is born. Let this be our message of hope this season. Unto us a child is born.